In the previous episode, we explored Dmitry Mendeleev's early life and how he grew into the extraordinary scientist we know today. In this episode, we'll go a step further. We'll look at how he created the periodic table, a turning point in the history of science, and how his passionate relationship with a woman 26 years younger sparked fierce criticism and even hostility from the academic community. We'll also examine the later part of his life, his influence on Russian society not as a researcher but as a government administrator, and the story behind the Nobel Prize he ultimately never received. So let's begin. After completing his studies in Germany, Mendeleev returned to St. Petersburg University in 1861. He became a chemistry professor at the Institute of Technology in 1864, earned his doctorate in 1865 for his research on alcohol-water mixtures, and in 1867 succeeded his mentor, Professor Alexandrov, as professor of general chemistry. At the time, he couldn't find a textbook he liked for his classes, so he decided to write one himself, The Principles of Chemistry. Surprisingly, a first edition of this book was auctioned in 2019 for about £17,500, or roughly $23,000, a reminder of how valuable his work remains more than a century later. Facsimile editions are still available today. While writing his textbook, Mendeleev became convinced that organizing the 60 or so known elements more systematically would reveal the underlying laws of chemistry. He wrote each element's properties on a card and rearranged them again and again, searching for a pattern. But it was incredibly difficult. The concept of atomic number didn't exist yet, and even atomic weights were not reliable. Still, he collected data from scientists around the world, repeated his own experiments, and filled the floor with hundreds of cards. Eventually, a recurring relationship between atomic weight and chemical properties began to emerge. On March 18, 1869, he published his paper, The Dependence of Chemical Properties on Atomic Weight, revealing the first periodic table. In 1871, he went further. He corrected the placement of several known elements and predicted the existence and even the properties of elements that had not yet been discovered. Under boron, aluminum, and silicon, he left blank spaces and named the unknown elements Eka boron, Eka aluminum, and Eka silicon. Eka meaning one below in Sanskrit. These later turned out to be scandium, gallium, and germanium, and their properties matched his predictions with stunning accuracy. When the periodic table was first introduced, the scientific community reacted coolly. Many chemists doubted it because Mendeleev had altered accepted data, rearranged elements, and even left empty spaces for undiscovered ones. Add to that the fact that the structure of the atom was still unknown, and skepticism was inevitable. But as the predicted elements were discovered and matched his forecasts almost exactly, the periodic table quickly gained acceptance. Before he even turned 40, Mendeleev had become one of the most respected scientists in the world. Of course, from today's standpoint, the table he created was incomplete. It wasn't until the early 20th century, when Henry Moseley established the concept of atomic number based on proton count, that the modern periodic table was finalized. Still, it was Mendeleev who built the foundation. In an era with no understanding of atomic structure, his ability to identify periodicity using only limited data and intuition remains one of the great achievements in the history of science. His periodic table didn't just organize elements, it helped transform chemistry from an alchemical craft into a rigorous scientific discipline. Yet his life was far from smooth. Mendeleev lived by his mother's teaching: oppose injustice and pursue progress. His straightforward, uncompromising personality made him admirable, but it also caused friction within the academic world. This tension became strikingly clear in 1880, during the election for full membership in the Russian Academy of Sciences. Despite his global reputation, he failed to win the vote. The decision shocked Russian society and remains one of the most controversial moments in the Academy's history. Historians point to his unyielding temperament, deeply entrenched academic factions, and his growing interest in the boundary between physics and chemistry, an interest that put him at odds with more traditional chemists. And during this turbulent period, he was also caught up in a scandal that conservative Russian society could not ignore: a dramatic love story. Mendeleev married Feozhva Leshcheva in 1862 and had 2 children, but his growing research commitments began to strain the marriage. By 1871, around the time he was completing his second periodic table paper, Feozhva and the children moved to Moscow, beginning a long period of separation. Notably, the couple remained legally married for years. Then, in 1880, a pivotal year in his life, everything changed. Mendeleev was living with the support of his sister Yekaterina, and one day, Yekaterina's daughter brought home a friend from art school, Anna Ivanovna Popova. Mendeleev, 46 at the time, immediately felt drawn to the 20-year-old Anna, and despite the significant age gap, the two quickly grew close. But legally, he was still married. He requested a divorce several times, but the Russian Orthodox Church had strict rules and refused. Facing social scrutiny, Anna left for Italy for a time. Finally, in 1881, Mendeleev was granted a divorce and immediately traveled to Italy to reunite with her. They were married in a small ceremony there and spent their honeymoon traveling through Naples, Capri, Florence, and Paris. He returned to Russia in May 1881, and the couple held a formal wedding ceremony in April 1882. However, church law required a 7-year waiting period before remarriage, technically placing his new marriage in violation of religious rules and fueling further criticism. Even so, Mendeleev stood by his decision and built a new life with Anna. After marrying, the couple moved to Bobolovo, where Anna requested that their new house be built without any traces of his previous family. Records also suggest she disliked Mendeleev's continued financial support of his former household, revealing that she too possessed a strong character. The couple eventually had 4 children, including twins, and remained together until Mendeleev's death. In 1890, Mendeleev resigned from St. Petersburg University after publicly supporting student protests over corruption. The university, fearing international repercussions, removed him from his posts as dean and professor, and he would never return to teaching. But his career didn't end there. Soon after, he was appointed director of the Bureau of Weights and Measures, where he led a sweeping reform of Russia's measurement system. By 1899, Russia officially switched from the arshin to the meter and from pounds to grams, changes that laid the foundation of modern Russian metrology. This period also gave rise to the famous, though inaccurate, story that Mendeleev set the standard 40% alcohol level for vodka. While he did write his doctoral thesis on alcohol-water mixtures, no official record shows that he determined the national vodka standard. Ironically, he preferred dry wine. Now comes a question many people often wonder about. Did Mendeleev ever win a Nobel Prize? In 1906, he was considered a leading candidate for the Nobel Prize in chemistry. However, the award went instead to the French chemist Henri Moissan, who had isolated fluorine. The result surprised many observers, and stories circulated that some of Mendeleev's opponents within the scientific community had organized votes against him, but no official evidence supports this. Sadly, he passed away later that year, just a month before his birthday. Since the Nobel Committee does not award prizes posthumously, he would never receive one. Regardless of the Nobel outcome, Mendeleev's influence on science is unquestionable. He was a true polymath, active in chemistry, physics, engineering, agriculture, economics, and even early aviation. He also ran a farm using modern methods, made cheese, and shared his agricultural knowledge freely. His lifestyle remained simple and modest throughout his life. For these reasons, Mendeleev is remembered not only as a brilliant scientist, but also as a remarkable human being. Although his direct manner earned him enemies during his life, his achievements and character were fully appreciated only after his death. Today, his influence is visible everywhere. The 101st element, Mendelevium, bears his name. In Russia, his name appears on metro stations, cities, and even an icebreaker. A crater on the moon is named Mendeleev. And since 2021, UNESCO and Russia have awarded the Mendeleev Medal to outstanding researchers in the basic sciences. More than a century after his death, the world continues to honor him, proof of just how profound his legacy remains. So, what did you think of Dmitry Mendeleev's untold stories in today's episode? For me, what stands out the most is how he kept his passion alive until his very last day, always pursuing what he wanted to understand and achieve. Alright, that's all I've prepared for you today. I'll be back next time with another fascinating story. Thanks for watching.